Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Svemin Digital Environmental Conference. Glad to be back here in the studio below the Svemin office downtown Stockholm, and I will walk you through this second day of this conference. And my name is Emma Hardmark, and I'm a Director of Communication here at Svemin. Svemin is the Swedish Mining Association, as you all know. And this fourth session that we will focus on here will be the important issue of tailings dam safety. And actually, back in 1999, when we held the first Svemin Environmental Conference, that was the theme for that year, that first environmental conference. That was held in Skellefteå. So the question about tailings dam safety is still around very much. Just like yesterday, we are using the Menti platform to pose questions to our speakers, and on that, the Menti platform, you can share your thoughts or when you send in comments to share with us. And we will, in the end of the two sessions that we have left today, we will have a panel discussion. And the code is not the same as yesterday, so if you logged in yesterday, you need to log in again. So you go to menti.com and use the code 2461790. That is 2461790. Just a few months ago, the ICMM launched their new global industry standard on tailings management. That's a massive document. And we are very happy to have someone here to go through this important document with us. Please welcome the CEO and Director Environment Program at ICMM, Aidan Davey.
Emma, thank you very much for that introduction. And thanks to Svemin for inviting us to this very important event. Before I go into what will be the first part of
now at least I can see John Houchin. Hi, John. We're waiting for Aidan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Our guys in the studio, they're working hard to get the right face on screen. Like I mentioned yesterday, this is the very first digital conference that we host, so bear with us, these technical issues that we sometimes run into. We are doing our best to... Are we up and running now? Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Emma, can you hear me?
We cannot hear you. Are you muted, or have we muted you?
I am not muted. Hi, can you hear me?
You can start, please. Go ahead.
Yes, you can hear me, Emma? Okay, good. Well, listen, thank you very much for that introduction, Emma. It's a great pleasure to be here at this Svemin event. And thank you for the opportunity to participate in what I think is a very important conversation. Just before I go into my presentation, I should clarify one point, and that is that I'll be speaking today for the first part of this event about the global industry standard on tailings management, which was a product of a collaborative effort between the ICMM, the Principles for Responsible Investment, and the United Nations Environment Programme. So it is very much co-owned and co-developed by those three parties. I guess the context and the background to this work was the tragic events at Brumadinho on the 25th of January last year. And not only was Brumadinho a human and environmental tragedy, but it was also, I think, the greatest loss of life we had seen in relation to any tailings incident in over 25 years or 30 years indeed. I think the last time the world had seen anything on this scale was at Stave in northern Italy in 1985. And I think we must never forget the men and women who lost their lives during that incident, because they serve as a constant reminder of the need for us to learn from past mistakes and to do better when it comes to the management of tailings storage facilities. In terms of the immediate impact of that incident, I think firstly we saw very strongly critical press reaction Vale, but also of the industry's inability to readily provide information on tailing storage facilities. Equally, there was an extremely strong and negative reaction from investors. And I think they were concerned about the inability of companies to point to potential unquantified major risk exposures within their portfolios. They were also concerned about the inability of companies to easily provide information on tailing storage facilities. Sometimes very basic information was not at the fingertips of companies. And I think there was a sense of their concern at their own failure to follow up on concerns that had arisen around the Samarco incident at the end of 2015, which perhaps had not been followed through fully. We saw the market reacting unfavorably with respect to Vale, but I think more importantly, we also saw very significant industry stakeholders, including the PRI, UNEP, and others, expressing very strong concerns to ICMM and really calling on ICMM for industry leadership at that point. In response, I think what we attempted to do was to engage with our senior leadership very, very rapidly. And so within a month, our Council of CEOs, which is essentially our board, met together in Miami to discuss how best to respond. And at that point, the decision they made and the commitment was to conduct a global tailings review with an eye to developing an international standard for the management of tailings storage facilities. But it was very, very clear that going it alone was not an option. And so on that basis, the early decision was that we ought to work collaboratively with co-conveners. And so we quickly moved into conversation with the Principles for Responsible Investment and UNEP, both of whom had been in touch with us about the potential to co-convene this process. And we agreed on both a scope and approach to doing that and issued a press release to that effect towards the end of March 2019. Less than a month later, Professor Bruno Aberl was appointed as chair of the Global Tailings Review in April 2019. And then the process really, I think, began in earnest at the beginning of May when he first met with a broader advisory group, which I'll come on to in a moment. But the substantive work of the standard, I think it's fair to say, began at the end of June, beginning of July in 2019. Just to say a little bit about the governance of the Global Tailings Review. As I've mentioned, it was a co-convened process. It is sometimes referred to as an ICMM standard, but it is truly the product of the work of the three co-conveners. At the heart of the process was the chair, Professor Bruno Aberle, who I mentioned, and he went through a process of appointing 7, I think, respected and esteemed experts who could support him in the important work of developing the standard. There was also a multi-stakeholder advisory group, and the intention there was that that multi-stakeholder advisory group bring perspectives that might not necessarily be fully represented within the expert panel, and that included people from academia, civil society, industry tailings experts, insurance, legal advisors, representatives of multilateral organizations, and indeed oversight institutions. The standard itself was issued as a draft for consultation in November of 2019, and it was put out in 7 different languages. The consultations took place across multiple jurisdictions, and there were a series of webinars as well, focused on ESG and technical aspects in a variety of languages. So a really thorough process of external engagement with a view to helping shape the final content of the standard. And indeed, all of the product of that public consultation process is online and freely available. And then finally, I guess, just a little bit more than a year after the substantive work began, the standard was launched in August of this year. And I guess it's really the first global tailings standard that can be applied to both existing and future tailings facilities. At the point of launch, it was endorsed by all 3 co-conveners, and it has since, I think, been widely disseminated. Now, to just set the stage slightly for this conversation we're having today, I wanted to say a little bit about the content of the standard as well, because I think sometimes we talk slightly in the abstract, but overall, the standard comprises 6 separate topic areas. Within those topic areas, there are 15 individual principles, but beneath those principles, we have a number of requirements, and the total number of requirements within the Global Tailings Standard are 77. But I'm going to just focus at the topic level, those 6 topics, and say a little bit about those, and also to indicate the principles that sit beneath the topic areas. And this will be very much an impressionistic sense of what is in the standard, but all of the content, both of the standard and the associated documents, are available on the Global Tailings Review website, which is globaltailingsreview.org. So the first of the 6 topic areas is around affected communities. And here the emphasis is very much around respect for human rights through the conduct of human rights due diligence. It's also around meaningful engagement with project affected people, with specific emphasis on Indigenous peoples where they're present in the vicinity of tailing storage facilities. The second of the 6 topic areas speaks to this concept of an integrated knowledge base. And the idea of an integrated knowledge base is really to bring together information about the social, environmental, and the economic context of a tailings facility, with a view to having that inform decision-making by operators and key stakeholders throughout the tailings facility life cycle. And that knowledge base you will see being referred to in numerous different places within the standard. There are 2 principles that sit beneath this particular topic area, and between them they account for 8 individual requirements. The third and one of the most substantive parts of the Global Tailings Standard is around design, construction, operation, and monitoring. And again, within this particular topic area, we've got 4 separate principles. Collectively, there's more than 20 individual requirements that apply to those 4 separate principles. But the focus here is all about the integrity of the design to establish reliable systems for construction, operation, and monitoring throughout the life cycle, with a view to minimizing the risk of failure. And again, I think the critical point that's built into the standard is this notion around the dynamic nature of both environmental, social, and local economic contexts, which speaks to the need to be able to demonstrate the ability to upgrade the facility to a higher consequence classification where required, or if that's not possible, to protect the ability to reduce the consequences of potential failure. So it's a very significant number of requirements under this topic area. The 4th topic area is all about management and governance. And management and governance was the focus of a position statement on tailings governance that ICMM put out in the wake of the Samarco tailings disaster back at the end of 2015. But clearly more needed to be done. Having said that, management and governance remains a critically important part of the Global Tailings Standard. Again, within this particular area, there are 4 principles and collectively more than 20 requirements around the topic of management and governance. And the focus here is all about assigning responsibility and accountability for key roles for the management of tailings across the life cycle. And that includes standards for critical systems and processes that are fundamental to ensuring the integrity of the facility throughout its life cycle. There's a strong emphasis here on cross-functional collaboration, on institutional memory, and organizational culture as well. And the 5th of the 6 topic areas is all about emergency response, but also a focus on long-term recovery. The 2 principles that sit beneath this are firstly about emergency response, but secondly, how do you prepare for long-term recovery in the event of a catastrophic failure? And so the emphasis here is about establishing community-focused emergency preparedness and response plans, but also about making sure you've got adequate capacity, both internally and within the public sector agencies, to respond and engage with communities and others to prepare in the event of a failure. And the emphasis is also on the long-term recovery of communities, but also the natural environment in the event of a catastrophic failure. And finally, the sixth topic area is all about public disclosure and access to information. And I think this is very much cognizant of the need for greater information to be available, and speaks to, I think, the deficit we found ourselves in post-Brumadinho, when there was very little information that was readily accessible. And so this topic indicates a number of items for disclosure on an annual basis. And it also speaks to the importance of committing to participate in global initiatives for the creation of standardized, independent, industry-wide, publicly accessible information on the safety and integrity of tailings facilities. That's been kind of a whistle-stop tour through what is, an approximately 40-page document. I really do invite you to look at that online. But finally, before I stop for this part of my presentation, just to say, why is the standard different perhaps to some of the documents that have preceded it? And I think it's different for a number of reasons. And firstly, because it adopts this integrated perspective, whereby the social, environmental, and technical considerations are all addressed in a comprehensive manner within a single standard. Secondly, it's very much got a focus on the entire tailings facility life cycle, from the point of site selection through design, construction, management and monitoring to closure and post-closure. It takes an integrated approach and looks to try and address potential risks of catastrophic failure that may occur at any of those stages. I think a third key attribute of the standard is its focus on elevating accountability to the very highest organizational levels. And it brings in new requirements for independent oversight that apply to many different aspects of the standard, for example, around the conduct of alternatives analysis. And then lastly, it establishes very clear expectations around global transparency and disclosure requirements. I'm going to speak a little bit later on about ICMM's response to the standard, but I think I should stop there and turn it back to you, Emma.
Thank you, Aidan. Thank you very much. And like you mentioned, you're coming back in shortly to give us more comments. Last year, when we held our environmental conference in Skellefteå, we had John Hautjen from Swedish National Pension Funds with us. He gave a presentation on what's important from the investor's point of view. Since then, this new standard has been launched. And so, John, are you all happy now?
Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm just going to get the slideshow up. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Excellent. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me once again. Well, it's been a long ride, and thank you for the presentation, Aidan, and thank you for the cooperation on the standard. I think we've achieved something really good here. I'm going to pull you back a bit, like Aidan did, and I'm going to tell you a bit about the Mining and Tailings Dam Safety Initiative that I told you about last year. Based on what happened in Brumadinho, I'm not going to show you the video again like I did last year. Within a couple of days, the Church of England Pensions Board and the Council on Ethics, the Swedish National Pension Funds, decided to set up this project. It was pretty clear, as I described last time, and as Aidan alluded to, that these are my own pictures from Mariana, from the Mariana Samarco site in Brazil, that the response from the investment community post Mariana was not strong enough. We failed, and we concluded that we were not going to fail this time. It's really important for the mining industry to understand we can't continue to have the...
John,
yes?
The technicians tell me that we can't see your pictures.
You can't see my pictures?
Maybe you should try to share your screen or your presentation again.
All right, we'll do it again. Here we go. Why isn't that working? Share screen. Now?
Does it come out correct? Yeah, now it's okay.
Right. There we go.
Full screen. Please choose full screen. They're
yeah,
telling me.
yeah.
Okay, now over to you. Please continue.
Yeah, so no, that's not working. Sorry about that. But these are my own pictures from Mariana. And I think we should not forget, even though fortunately less lives were lost at Mariana, this is still an ongoing disaster zone with many years to finalize the cleanup. And unfortunately, the villages at Mariana has not been rebuilt yet, which is still part of the general criticism against Vale. This is taking far too long time, and it is building a hostile environment among communities in Brazil against mining in general. And the response is simply not strong enough. I'm sorry to say, we are not happy with this outcome. So there are a number of issues in the Brazilian context in regards to mining that still needs to be addressed, but we're not going to talk about them here. We're going to talk about the general situation in the mining industry. We were pretty clear after Brumadinho that we had no confidence left in the mining company Vale. This was a surprisingly big story in Sweden, considering this is a Brazilian mining site. But mining tends to get a lot of attention. Responsible mining tends to get a lot of attention in Sweden. And Sweden has a long and proud history of mining, so I can understand that. As you remember, we had a session with the Pope. I described that last year, and we had representatives coming up from Brumadinho, blessing those who passed away. It was a good signal to the communities in Brumadinho. We've been working closely with the communities in Brumadinho, and we continue to work closely with the communities in Brumadinho and Mariana as well as part of this project. This is really important for us. You know the key issue here. I think it's important to remind ourselves what the key issue here is. It's probably not tailings dams. It is unfortunately that we're mining too much, we're generating too much tailings, and we need to mine smarter. I think this is the long-term discussion that we need to address. We need to have a thorough discussion. Happily, we've got some excellent suppliers to the mining industry based in Sweden, like Sandvik and Epiroc, and I'm really proud of these companies. I think we need to have a bigger discussion going forward within the industry, how we're going to be able to mine in a much more efficient manner, because just building larger tailing dams is not going to solve this problem. I think that's the core discussion going forward. So, as you remember, how many dams, where are they, what is at risk, what technologies can be additionally deployed, how are tailings liabilities factors into corporate reporting, addressing the most high-risk facilities legacy, mine of the future without reducing. This was what we set up as our key topics a year and a half ago. We did the first intervention together with ICMM, public call for a new global standard, and it has been excellently presented by Aidan. Very pleased with this. I think it has been a very good progress. It's the process. It's taken quite some time to produce this. That's the case. It's been worthwhile. And as you know, I mean, the council and the investors, we have about $14 trillion behind this initiative. We are invested in all kind of industries all over the world, all kind of issues you can imagine and some you can't imagine. I think for us, it's been a hugely rewarding process to understand how we build these kind of global standards and in what sort of collaborations we've done that. And it's been great to work with ICMM. I'm really pleased with Aidan and Tom, the work and the group at ICMM. But also UNEP has been very supportive, and it's been a very productive process. Very pleased with the outcome of this. Obviously, now it's time to implement that, and we're going to listen to Boliden on that in the next step. Secondly, as many of you on this call are aware of, we went out for the disclosure request asking about 700 companies, globally listed companies, to disclose their pretty thorough list of information regarding the tailings dams. To Aidan's point, the investment community were not happy with the initial findings that they couldn't find information about tailings, and therefore this call. We produced the database together with Grid Arendal. I hope you've had a look at this database. We're quite pleased with that. It's a first step. It's by no means the end of the road. It's only the beginning of the road on global transparency on this topic. As part of the standard and as part of the process, we'll continue this discussion going forward. If you haven't had a look, please go into tailing.grid.no. Plenty of interesting information available, and thank you for all the mining companies, especially my Swedish friends on the calls, who've disclosed into this system. Here we go. So of the 723 companies contacted, we've had 339 responses. I think most importantly, 45 out of the top 50 largest mining companies in the world has responded. We have about 86% of the industry by market cap has responded. And 66% of the industry has fully and publicly disclosed. A number of companies are working on the response. We're waiting for that. Really pleased to see that 23 out of 23 ICMM members, the publicly listed members, have disclosed. But I'm also going to give some special praise to LKAB if you're listening in. It's the only non-listed company that has responded voluntarily to the database. And I think it sets the bar for non-listed companies to join this call for transparency on this issue. I know there's a lot of bondholders within our initiative that are quite keen to get other companies to respond as well. So watch that space. And obviously, we'd like to see the non-listed participants within ICMM to respond as well, showcasing leadership. So what are we up to? Well, to give you an idea of what we're looking at right now, obviously, we're very pleased with the first global industry standard in place. We've got the independent global database up and running, but we have quite a few work streams that are still up and running, very much aligned with the insurance industry and with the banking industry as well. And to be fair and honest, we're not going to let this one slip away this time. We've only started, and there's plenty of work to be done on this topic. The agenda for 2021 going forward, and as we're discussing right now, is, as was part of the recommendation by the independent chair and the independent experts, is to establish an independent international entity to oversee the global implementation of the Tailings standard. Our plan to have this entity up and running at the close of 2021. We're working closely with mining companies, but also with UNEP to set this up. We want an independent verification procedure of the implementation of the standard. We think this is key, and especially from the investment industry, from the banking industry, and I dare say from the insurance industry, which are quite keen on this. This is going to be really important. So watch that space. We also see it'd be good to merge the standard and the global data portals that we've produced, so we get efficiency into this system on reporting and transparency in accordance with the standard that we've produced. We will also obviously be evaluating outcome and practical tools. I think the leadership that ICMM is setting up on this and the transparency where they produce practical tools and guidance how to implement these kind of standards are really important, especially for smaller mining companies that don't have the resources that the large companies within ICMM have. That's really important for us to see that, so we can get sort of systems efficiency and scale of economy on the implementation of this. That's a key thing going forward. We're updating the database structure for next year, and we're preparing a second round of disclosure requests based on the outcomes of the implementation of the standard. We're planning for it to be a feed-in structure so companies can feed in their own data and be responsible for the ownership of their own data. We're also working quite extensively on one global 24/7 alert system for all tailings dams in the world. That's not unrealistic, we think. On the contrary, I think there's a huge opportunity based on scale of economies and the focus that is still on tailings dams. Finally, we are looking for a mechanism to remove the most dangerous tailing dams that are now being clearly identified all around the world. Yeah, that's about my plan and our plan right now. So am I happy? Yeah, I'm happy. I think we're moving along very nicely, but we have plenty of work ahead of us.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. And I'm glad you are happy. But that list of things to do on your to-do list, that's a long list, and it's a lot of work ahead of the global community, I'd say. Anyway, I'm sure the ICMM wants to comment on this, but we are running a bit late, so Aidan, Davy, I will leave your comments. You will have an opportunity to comment during the panel discussion at the end. So I just want to remind you guys that if you have any thoughts or questions that you want to send to the speakers, please use the menti.com platform. And you type in the code, I don't know if you can see it here on the screen, 2461790, 2461790. This new standard is covering the importance of organizational management and responsibility. That is equally important as fulfilling technical requirements. Therefore, we are very excited to learn how the world's third largest mining company, Rio Tinto, acts on these matters. So, from a sunny Stockholm morning to the dark Canadian night, please welcome Imran Gilani from Rio Tinto.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, Emma?
Loud and clear. We can hear you and we see you.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now, and then hopefully we can carry on. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, looking good.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Emma. And thank you, John. That was excellent. I mean, we hear you loud and clear. And I think the whole mining industry hears you got loud and clear on that. Look, the topic of my 10 or 14-minute presentation today is how Rio Tinto is set up to manage its tailings safely and responsibly. So this is a presentation mostly I prepared for Ottawa last year, but I'm going to give it over here, present it again over here. First of all, before we started on this journey, Rio Tinto back in 2014, this is before actually Mount Poly failure occurred in Brumadinho and obviously Samarco. We went into a thorough exercise of what we have learned from the failures that had occurred in the past, obviously. And this is a simple summary of those seven or so bullet points that we came up with. And then these bullet points, basically, then we took forward in our developing our internal standard for Rio Tinto tailings management. Good planning is on the number one. That obviously is extremely important, as you can imagine, that this covers all areas of locating a tailing facility, making sure we are not locating it in an area where there is a population downstairs that we can't manage, or also in the planning, making sure that we are adopting a technology that will reduce the volume of tailings. And this is, John stressed upon that in one of his slides, that this is extremely important. Once we are locked into, a mining company gets locked into a plan or a pre-feasibility, it becomes very difficult to change. So that's where we are stressing heavily on planning. Then the list goes on. Designs must be reviewed by independent, that's again, Aidan touched upon that. Independent reviews are extremely important. So nothing is surprising in this list that we compiled back in 2014, basically, of items. And all of these items then basically form the basis for our standard. I just want to touch upon this management of change that is on the last bullet, which is in red, is extremely important, as you would accept. The fundamental problem behind these failures, there are other technical issues obviously there, but the fundamental problem is poor management of change. Things are sometimes changed during construction, operation, or design or whatever, and there is not a proper understanding of the impact of that change. So this is an area where it's very dear to my heart. If you ask me, this is where I basically live and breathe. And this is something that we have stressed very heavily in our standard as well. This is what you can see is a typical 3 levels of assurance that Rio Tinto uses for its risk management, not just tailings, but generally for its risk management. It's similar to any other large corporation. For Rio Tinto, the first level is basically what happens on the site level. On the site level, we employ good people who can actually manage the facility. We employ good designers. We do inspections, monitoring. All those activities that are done at the site level is at the green base. Then above that, Rio Tinto has a very strong second level of assurance. And this is where Rio Tinto takes pride, that this is one of the strongest second level of assurance that we have. And over here, we got several pieces over here. One is these reviews that are done by internal specialists, people like me on the call, and external people that we bring in. We bring them independently, and we ask them to do review. And these are more strategic reviews, basically. What is happening down the road in 5 years, 10 years, whatever, so that we are not blindsided by something as of today. We should be prepared. And tailing dams are notorious. If you don't plan properly, something will go wrong. Then there is a whole piece that is called BCA on this, which is business conformance audits. So these are again audits which are separate from reviews. Audits are basically against the standards that Rio Tinto has. And these audits are done again by people who are independent of site operations. And Rio Tinto has these standards, and tailing standard is one of them. So there is a clear separation between the green and the blue for the second level. Then we move on to the top. We don't stop at that level. At the board level, we have another system of assurance, which is the third level. And this is where we invite external partners and business consultants like KPMG or Ernst & Young, and then they engage an external specialist, and they go around checking on the health of the systems. So basically, they are looking for any shortfalls in our systems where things can go wrong, and they come back and advise us completely separately from our operations and second level. So pretty strong. And underneath here is the D5 standard, which we call as a tailing standard of Rio Tinto, that underpins this entire 3 levels of assurance. I'm not going to spend time on this one, how audits improve operation, that's something, but I'm going to move to the next slide. Rio Tinto's management standard is called D5 standard. We started working on this in 2014, before Mount Poly. And I'm very proud to say that this standard has basically stood up to the tests that have gone through after, obviously, including the ICMM and the global standard also. It's a mandatory standard. It's not an optional. Every operation in Rio Tinto, every tailing facility is mandated to abide by and conform with this standard. It covers all life cycle development phases, not just operations or anything. It covers everything from planning, design, all through to closure. The standard is not entirely a technical standard. It is basically a management standard, where we basically make sure we have enough controls in place for our internal governance. So we have clear accountabilities assigned over here on a corporate level. The organization of the standard is again very typical. And just like MAC or CDA or ENCODE or any other standard that you have seen, it starts from planning, I again stress upon that, gets into implementation, gets into review, and if whatever is found in the review, you go back to the drawing board of planning and you start again. So that's how typically it's workable. It's auditable. This is not just a document that is given to the site and then we expect them to abide by it. No. We go out there as a second level of assurance, and it's auditable. There's a whole audit that happens, and the deficiencies in non-conformance are reported, and then actions are developed to track them over the next weeks or months or whatever to make sure that the things are taken care properly. The highlights of the standard, this is just a very brief summary over here. I'm conscious of time. Clear accountabilities. This is Aidan stressed upon that. The global standard also is talking about it very, very strongly. We do accountability. There are defined roles. Good documentation. This is another area where we have seen in mining industry things fall down, is that many good facilities do not have proper documentation behind them. If you go and ask them, well, yes, we did it this way and it's in someone's head and blah, blah, blah. But we stress upon making sure documentation exists, which includes obviously the manuals and the design reports, etc. Design engineer is basically a focal point, and we make sure that the design engineer is kept engaged during different stages of the operation. We do not just engage design engineer and then say goodbye after doing the design and we'll see you after 5 years. That is obviously an area where things fall down. We do not do that. And then obviously the list goes on. Management of change, I stressed upon earlier, very important, and heavy focus on monitoring and design verification. Now, this is an area we do not, in our standard, we do not use the term, the performance-based approach that Professor Morgenstern now has and ICMM has adopted. But in essence, we capture the spirit. We have been doing it since 2014. Same thing that is now performance-based, but we are calling it different. But in essence, we are exactly following the same principles over here. Next slide. Now I get into where do we stand with ICMM. I don't need to tell you ICMM, Aidan has already covered. You know, they released this position statement back in 2016 that many of you have seen. And keep in mind, our standard was in 2014. Key recognition, we keep them there. The tailings production is inherent, but the important is that owners are accountable. If you see on my red text, owners are accountable, no matter what. The accountability sits with the mining company, period. I mean, there is no other excuse around it that you designed this and that. Science and expertise for preventing TSF failures is there. We are not short of this technology. 6 elements that ICMM basically developed are all incorporated into our D5 standard. And I'm not going to go through all these 6 elements. You can read them with the ICM document, but all of them are encountered in our D5 standard, which makes me very proud, since we wrote the standard before these 6 elements were developed. Look, this is a slide that I like personally quite well. This is towards the end of my presentation. And I use it as a simple slide to communicate to our senior management. This is an area where Rio Tinto and I personally would like to stress that we do a lot of good work. Many mining companies do a lot of good work. But if you cannot communicate that good work in a simple way, effective way to the senior management, which is sitting above us, people who are making decisions, multi-million, multi-billion dollar, then we have failed in our task. People like me have failed. And sometimes I have to recognize this does happen. So what this slide basically is to explain that the safe tailings management is a 3-legged stool. It is not a very complicated process. It's a 3-legged stool based on design, construction, and operation. And if a weakness develops in any one of these legs, the stool will fall down. So we can't just say we are doing an excellent job in construction or operation and the design is poor. The stool is going to fall down. Okay, so we make sure this balance of expertise and balance of focus is maintained. And this is a slide that I use for our senior management. That many times excellent designs prepared by excellent engineers are absolutely undermined during construction or during operation. And look, we are going to be transparent. It has happened in many places. It may have happened in Rio, but we are recognizing that flaw and we are there to make sure it does not happen with our D5 standard. So this is basically gist of my presentation. I'm cognizant of time. I've taken 12 minutes. I was given 13 or 14. So basically, I'm ready for any questions down whenever the time is there. But thank you very much for this opportunity to let me talk. Back to you, Emma.
Thank you, Imran. Thank you very much. I found it very interesting that you, even though the construction of your management system is simple and clear, you said it's three-legged stool. Would you say that your approach is scalable for smaller mining companies?
Absolutely, Emma. Absolutely. It is a risk-based approach. Okay, we basically prioritize. We do not go into each and every, because that is another area where things do not work. Is if you ask small operators to, you burden them with everything. We are getting into a step-by-step approach, and then we basically build it from bottom up within Rio Tinto, and it can be scaled outside as well.
But the resources within a mining company compared, Rio Tinto compared to a much smaller company, do you have any piece of advice to give them to sort of scale down your structure and make it work in a smaller mining company?
Look, we have got joint ventures in some places where the resources are limited. This is not, and these operations are cash strapped sometimes. The message, the advice we give is focus on the key fundamental controls. And we have a bow tie of critical controls. I don't have it in my presentation here, but a bow tie of critical controls. So if we focus on a handful of 5 or 6 critical controls, we can manage the basic risk quite effectively. And then you can build upon that as time goes by.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you once again, Imran, and thank you for getting up in the middle of the night to give this excellent presentation for us. You can now go back to sleep for a while before I call you back for the final panel discussion.
No, I'll be here, no problem. Thank you.
For the rest of us, it's time not to go to bed, but it's time to get up and do some shaking again. So I say, Moa Veile, please, welcome back.
Thank you, Emma. All right, I would like you all to stand up, grasp this opportunity and get moving a bit. I want you to stand up, as I said, and put your feet shoulder width apart. Make sure you distribute your weight evenly on both feet and then tie a foot. Put your hands alongside your sides. We're going to start with the legs, and I want you to look over one shoulder as far as you possibly can. Come back to the middle and the other side as far as you possibly can. Once more each side. So you turn your head over one shoulder, look over it, and the other side. All right, we stop with the head in the middle, so look straight ahead of you. We're going to bend to the side, try to reach your knee joint, and come up again, other side. Make sure you actually bend to the side and not slightly forward. And come up again. We're going to increase this slightly, so you're going to push your hip out to the side while you're turning, turning to the side. And then the other side. Push your hip out. All right, once more, a little bit faster this time, is to make sure we got the movement. All right, stop in the middle. I want you to work on your double chin, so push it in as much as you can, and we roll the shoulders back. And stop with your shoulders right in the back as fast as you possibly can, and you bend backwards. Keep looking forward. Come up again. We roll them shoulders forward now. And we bend forward. Keep looking straight ahead. I want you to move your hands below your knees and up again to your thighs. Again, below the knees. Feel the stretch on the back of your legs and up. Once more, you know this now. Roll them back. Working your double chin and bend backwards. Come up again and roll those shoulders forward and bend forward. Move the hands below the knees. Up on the thighs again, below the knees and up on the thighs. Stand up. Hands along the sides, body upright, and we push the arms back. Straight arms, really work those shoulders. And we do the complete opposite, above the head and behind the head. Once more, all the way back, keep that body upright. Ooh, it's hard. And up behind the head. All right, keep those arms up here. Make yourself as tall as you possibly can. Even come up on your tiptoes and stretch a little bit more, a little bit taller. And relax. Shake them arms out. Shake them legs out. Thank you very much for participating. Over to Emma yet again.
Thank you, Moa. Excellent. And I could see you speakers on our Zoom. When I can see all you speakers, excellent performance. Thank you, guys. We just heard Imran Gilani from the Rio Tinto, their approach on tailings management and governance. He also gave this short piece of advice to smaller mining company. So our next speaker, Hans Häggström from Boliden, what do you say? What are your comments? Okay. Is he here? Is he online? Are you online, Hans? Yeah, it's coming. The studio room. They're talking. Something's mysterious is happening.
Can you see my screen and can you hear my voice?
I can hear your voice. Do we see his screen? Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Hans.
Thank you.
So what are your thoughts on so just start by asking you again, what are your thoughts on the piece of advice that Imran Gilani of Rio Tinto just gave you? It's scalable. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. It's scalable and it's good inspiration for our work also. And I can see that we are doing a lot of the same work that Rio Tinto is doing according to. We have a guideline and we are working with a tailings management system and so on. So I think we are on a good way, even if we are a smaller company.
Okay. I leave the floor to you now, Hans.
Pieces in place. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Adrian, John, and Imran for a good presentation, and also Moa for this good exercise. It feels great to get some new air and blood into your body, more or less. So I will start this presentation to do say hello, and I'm a dam safety develop engineer at the HRNS department at Boliden's mine environmental staff. And I want to start to thank Svemin for this opportunity to hold this presentation so we can share our work that we have done so far and our experience regarding the implementation of the new global tailings standard. And from my perspective, the standard have a wider scope than we typically associate with tailings management and dam safety. And I believe that the standard will increase the perspective in density, and that will give us a lot of opportunity to come up with the best sustainable solution for the tailings management. So I will change so this is the content. I will have a short introduction. And after that, I will have our implementation process plan that are divided into 4 different phases, and what we have done so far, and our planned future work. So, at Boliden, we have an environmental policy that at least content this, that we shall commit to responsible waste and dam safety management to protect health and safety and to minimize on environment. And for support that, we have a tailings management system that is an integrated part of the Boliden management system. And to support our operations to fulfill this, we have an internal guideline for dam safety. So this is the system we have right now and how we have been working with it. And here you also can see a table of the amount of extractive waste that we produced for the last 3 years. And as you can see, as also John mentioned, that the waste production is increased. And this is also, and you see that the last year we produced more than 50 million tonnage of tailings that we have to deposit in a tailings storage facility. And in the map to the right, you can see where we have our tailings storage facility that we're depositing in today. And this is also why tailings management is so important for Boliden, that we produce this much of it. So, and this is our implementation process plan, and we have divided into 4 phases. And when we talk about this plan, you can also see that Boliden is committed to the global tailings standard. And I will now try to explain the different phases. And as here you also can see the timeline for our planned implementation. So we have started with this initial assessment, and this is also where we are right now, even if we have come a little bit further. And even if this implementation process plan is presented as a straight line, the phases are parallel in many ways. But the initial assessment, the first phase of the implementation process, is about carefully assessing whether the new global tailing standards meets a real need and wherever it fits in the organization. In this phase is also assessed wherever the standard is needed and where we can adapt it to fit into the organization. And also to get a common understanding by information and education, to get a common acceptance for the standard inside of the organization and the whole company. And the next phase is structure for implementation. Is about developing a structure for the implementation of the standard. So before the end of phase 2, there should be a clear plan of what should happen and when. It should also be clear who is responsible for different parts of the implementation process. And to get the right input for this, we have done or planning to do some gap analysis and also some bench learning and benchmarking, so we can use the whole industry knowledge and how they are working with this, so we can help out each other. And then we come into the implementation, and this is where the real implementation is happening. So structure and support for the work are an important part for this phase. So phase 3 includes the following components: practical and technical support to the implementers. That will say an improved tailings management system with guideline and instruction. And also evaluation of the implementation process and feedback to the all involved. And then we have the fourth and the last phase, learn and improve. And this is, as it sounds like, about learning from experience and reviewing both internal and external, how well we meet the standard, and continuous work with our continuous improvement. So this is our implementation plan. And what have we done so far? We have started with this information and education to get the common understanding for the standard. We have had internal meetings and also workshops to discuss the standard, and in different level in the organization. We have had with the personnel that works the day-to-day at the TSF, and also with the people that are responsible for the dam safety. And then we also have done, or we will continue with this work also. We have an annual tailings management conference in the beginning of November, and this will be, of course, a topic for that event. And we also will have a workshop for the upper management inside of Boliden Mines to discuss this standard even more. And we have performed a high-level gap analysis on principal level, and we have presented for the dam safety responsible. And we have pointed out at least 3 topics or 3 areas that we consider a demand of a larger workload to say that we are sure to be in line with the standard. And that is governance, a systematic way of work regarding instruction and documentation, organization, that roles and responsibility and accountability have to be a little bit clearer and a better understanding for it, and also the resources for it. And also, as always, we have to increase the knowledge base and also to document it even better. So, but I would say in general, from the gap analysis, we do a lot of the requirements, and that's also a part of our current legislation and in our industrial standard. So what's our further work? It's to get a good project team for this implementation, and I will also take this opportunity to reach out for a project leader So if you think you are, or that you know the right person, don't hesitate to contact us and say who can be this project leader. So now we are planning also to see and to set up this project, and we are planning to divide this project into 2 different projects. That one is on a more higher level, that will be the requirements that will go out to the whole Boliden group and can be managed for that. And then we have another project group that will be more on operational level. So that's where we are. Then we will use the gap analysis to the input for the implementation, so we know what type of instruction and how we have to, even if our tailings management is good today, but I will believe that nothing is that good that it can't be better. And in the end, we also worked at all the site-specific OMS manual will be updated, so we, in the end of learn and improve, we are in line with the standard. So that was all for me. So thank you very much for taking your time.
Thank you very much, Hans. Thank you for an interesting presentation. I was curious, if it hadn't been for this global tailings standard, had you been implementing or taking those measures anyway?
I would say we started a TSF project back in some years ago, that we have seen that this is some of the things we need to be even better on. So we have a project back then started, and that we see that this is the same question that we find out then. But now we have to give it a little bit more resources and do get it done, I would say.
Talking about resources, the implementing these kind of, thorough standard, it isn't for free, Is it very costly?
That's a good question. I say both yes and no. This depends on what you compare with. If something will go wrong, then it's very cheap to implement the standard. If something will go wrong and we have a dam failure, for example.
Okay, needs to be done anyway. Thank you very much, Hans. I will now invite all speakers back for the closing panel discussion. So do we have everyone online? Yes, thank you. First, I would like to ask Imran from Rio Tinto. Are you happy with how this new standard came out?
Yes, we are quite happy, and we were actually involved in the advising also on the sidelines. We were supporting it through ICMM and other avenues. It is very much aligned with our internal D5 standard, like I said earlier. So for us, it is not a surprise or anything new. It does bring in formality. It does bring in the social aspects that we were missing earlier. So we totally are happy with it.
But and another question for Aiden, or maybe for John too. Was it difficult to, or what were the most difficult parts to agree on?
Well, maybe if I go first, John. Look, the truth is, I don't think I would pick upon any particular piece and say that was the most difficult part. But the thing that I think is fair to say is that when you're in a multi-stakeholder process, as we were, to try and forge a standard through consensus, invariably there were differing perspectives from whether it was from ASA, from UNEP, or from PRI, on the relative importance of particular aspects of the standard. The thing I think I can say with complete confidence, though, is that by going down this multi-stakeholder route, ultimately that has strengthened the quality and the content of the final product. So in some respects, it's not about individual parts, and it's more about multi-stakeholder processes are by their nature slightly more convoluted, slightly more time-consuming, but they're worth it.
Yeah, and to Imran's point, and thank you for the presentation, both Imran and Hans. I think they complemented each other excellently. I mean, we clearly knew that there were best practice out there in the business on a global basis, and you simply need to push best practice to the forefront. And when you do that, people can recognize that this is best practice, and that's where we're starting. So I totally agree with Imran, and thank you for the excellent work from Rio in the participation of this process as well. So, and that's basically what you do when you make a standard. You get best practice clearly out there transparently for everyone to see what best practice is.
I understand that the in implementing this standard in as many mining companies or mining operation as possible, a real bottleneck could be to find enough tailings engineers or design engineers. I mean, to carry out this new standard. For Imran and Hans representing mining companies, what do you say? Is this a real, what are your thoughts on this?
No, it's a very important point, Emma, that you touched upon. Yes, there is an extreme shortage of good qualified engineers and tailings, especially the youngsters. We have not pushed this through enough. The universities were not producing enough. And the older ones for independent reviews. For example, a very fundamental pillar is the independent review that the standard is also pushing. We only have a handful, maybe 10, 20 gray-haired, senior, experienced worldwide. I mean, and there are like 100 mining companies. So how are we going to use those? And then they are getting close to retirement. Some of them are 70-year-old. That is a serious issue. But anyway, mining companies are working like others. We are working with universities, and there is a need to provide scholarships and programs to bring in young people into this discipline, definitely.
Do you agree, Hans? Do you find the situation the same? These gray-haired old men?
Yes, I find the situation the same, and it's all about capacity building, and that's something we have to take a bigger responsibility in as a company, as an industry. And also we have to share best practice between each other, so we don't reinvent the wheel every time between the companies. So we should not be competitive when it comes to this. We should share with each other so we can raise the bar together for all the companies, because we are all losers if there are a damn failure.
Yeah, that's true. Another question for Aidan and John. Do you see a risk here? I mean, the larger mining companies and mining operations, they have more resources to actually hire these very afterthought design engineers and tailings engineers, but the rest, all the middle or the smaller mining companies, they might not even get a hold of these people that have this crucial role in the mining companies.
So I was actually quoted in the New York Times on this when we released the standard a few weeks ago, and I said, I think it's our belief, and I think it's excellently responded by Imran and Hans here, that we're going to build a cadre of young people coming into the industry, which I think are going to become a global sort of expert group on this topic. I think for a number of smaller mining companies, you're going to need external expertise coming in, helping them, and then moving to the next mine. And in that way, we're going to secure sort of a global implementation of the standard and a streamline of best practice. It's obviously going to take time, but we've been mining for a very long time and we'll continue to mine for a very long time. So time we have on our side. We need that cooperation that Imran and Hans is alluding to. And as I said in my presentation, I think the ICMM is an excellent vehicle to collect that best practice and to spread best practice into the mining industry. So we're counting on Aidan and his co-workers at ICMM to do that.
Yeah.
Just maybe building on John's point, I think, firstly, perhaps more so than at any point in the history of mining, we now have a clear kind of pathway to a very viable and rewarding career for young professionals coming into the industry in the practice of tailings management. That was not the case historically. So I think the standard will help to elevate the profile and the importance of tailings management, and will signal this is this is an opportunity space for young professionals. I also think, to John's point, when this area of best practice is so important and good practice. We're in the process of putting together a good practice guide for tailings management. We're also in the process of putting together a conformance protocol to support our members in the short term with implementation of the global standard, because they've committed to an ambitious timeline. Those resources are needed almost now, but they're not just going to be available to members. Those resources will be widely available and disseminated to the entire industry. And that will also be a help to companies that are looking to implement with their own internal resources.
I'll then stay with you, Aidin, for a while. I had to interrupt you earlier when you asked for comments on John's presentation. Do you want to add something to what John said early on in this session?
No, I guess, just to emphasize that I think we all have kind of respective roles to play. And I think, John's mentioned the work that's underway to try and move to establish an independent entity. I think it's important and right that that's done through PRI and UNEP, and we look forward to engaging in discussions at an appropriate juncture with them on this. I think maybe the one thing I would add, though, is that given that, and as Hans pointed out, companies need to move on this quickly. And at the point of launch, our membership committed to implementing the standard fully for extreme and high-risk facilities within 3 years and all other facilities within 5 years. And that's why we're working hard to put together the resources that will support them on that journey. And those resources, as I say, will be available more broadly beyond the industry. Just on the point of a conformance protocol, it's critical, I think, that people have something in hand that enables them to begin to, probably in the first instance, to self-assess against how are we progressing in terms of implementation, and then ultimately to bring in external resources when it comes to the conduct of third-party assessments on implementation. And that work, as I say, it's important, it's pressing, it's imperative. We have it soon. We aim to have it by no later than early the beginning of next year. But we also see that as a potential contribution to this independent entity. They won't be starting from ground zero when it comes to looking to develop something like this, and hopefully it will be largely fit for purpose.
Thank you. I would just for a moment we take a step back and sort of define what is dam safety. How much is dam safety a technical issue, and how much is it a management issue? Imran, you touched upon that in the end of your presentation. Do you, Hans from Boliden, do you agree? Or what do you say? Is it rather a technical issue, or is it a management issue?
I think it all sticks together.
I'm impressed with your understanding. You're touching upon the key points. Very, very, very impressed. I mean, in the beginning, I thought it was a technical issue, but as you progress and you see things, you very quickly realize it is a management issue as well. And that is what I said in my last slide. If we technical people are not able to communicate to our senior management, we have failed. And that applies to dam safety as well.
Yeah, what do you say, Hans? Do you agree on that? Or how would you, is it rather the one way or the other?
I would say it's all stick together, but it's all about also culture, how we see on our waste. Is it only waste, or is it something that we need in our value chain to do our production of concentrate?
Yeah, so is it waste or a resource, potential resource? Yeah. I think we touched upon that a lot last year at the Swedish Environmental Conference, waste versus potential resource. Just like yesterday during our sessions, I have a sidekick today, and it's my colleague Linus Ljungström, and he is the one mastering and working on the income of all the questions that you have asked or posed. So he will now. Linus, do we have any questions?
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, perfect. We do have some questions from the audience, and let's see. The first one is for Aidin and or John. And it is in the global standard, the consequence classes with the loss of over 1,000 lives is equal to the loss of 5,000 jobs. How was the discussion behind that, since the safety net for unemployment vary globally? So John or Aidan, do you have any thoughts on that? Or thoughts or comments?
I think my observation would be that we are not looking to equate those as somehow equivalent. These are attributes that apply to the various consequence levels as laid out in the tabular summary at the back of the standard. And the suggestion is not that these are somehow equivalent, but it is simply to try and provide some form of differentiation between, in the unlikely event of failure, what are the consequences, both in terms of human life, but also the economic consequences in terms of, loss of livelihoods and indeed impact on the environment as well. So I would say, please don't interpret that table as somehow suggesting that these things are equivalent, or indeed that there are trade-offs between them, because that's absolutely not the intent.
All right, thank you. And another question here is for also, I would say, Aidan and or John maybe. What are your views on the deep sea water tailings in Indonesia at, for instance, the Grasberg mine? What would the alternative be?
So this is John. As you might be aware, Freeport-McMoRan is a recommended exclusion by the council due to the Grasberg mine. And from our perspective, we've asked companies, and that's riverine tailings, just to clarify, that any company that utilizes riverine tailings in Indonesia need to sign a public policy where they disclaim using that technology for future projects. We're going to do exactly a similar thing on deep sea tailings as we speak, because obviously due to this coming out now, the standard coming out, and we see increased focus on the nickel mines in Indonesia, where you see usage of deep sea tailings as well, which is totally unacceptable, which is not the purpose of this standard. The purpose is to try to mine less and waste and get more clearly defined minerals out of the mining process. Dry stacking is a good technology. Obviously, it's difficult discussions in some places. The Grasberg mine is a very complicated project, but we need to be clear on the alternatives here.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And over to Emma.
Thank you. Thank you, Linus. I have another question. I guess ICMM represents is it 27 mining companies? How do we really include all the other 1,000 plus mining companies out there in implementing this standard?
So I'll take the opportunity to respond. We have a really good dialogue with about 400 listed mining companies as of right now. They've responded really well to our questionnaire. That was the purpose of the questionnaire, was to set up that network of mining companies. And we'll be pushing, and I think this has been a really great discussion. We'll be pushing for transparency from the leaders like Boliden and Rio here, showcasing leadership, picking up best practice, and trying to establish a wider platform than the ICMM. And I know from discussions with Aidan and Tom that ICMM is completely okay with that. We need to build a stronger relationship within the mining industry. We're not going to be, it's going to be the weakest link within the mining industry. That's going to be our concern, and we need to strengthen that one. And I'm really encouraged by the response from the whole mining industry on this topic. So I think there's a fundamental change here right now that we're going to run with. That's the purpose of the agenda, and quite still a very ambitious agenda, to be honest. But otherwise, I think we risk not using the momentum we have right now, and that would be really stupid, quite honestly.
I think maybe just to add to John's point, so as you say, we're 27 member companies, and so that's a small drop in the bucket in terms of the total number of mining companies. But I think that the power of the co-convened model here is critically important, because it's the signal effect coming from a group of leading companies that this is of profound importance to them. It's also then, I think, the signal effect of investors increasingly requiring adherence to the standard as a condition of investment. that I expect to see following through. And indeed, the participation of UNEP is incredibly important in supporting governments that wish to incorporate and build upon the standard into their kind of national or state legislation and policies. And so this is very much about that collaborative endeavor by the co-conveners in the first instance, but I think we're also starting to see interest from banks, insurers, and others to hardwire adherence to the global standard into their conditions of providing either investment, finance, or insurance. And that, I think, is what will ultimately take us to scale in terms of broad-based uptake and implementation.
Thank you, Aidan. Do you want to have something to add? Hans, representing one of these smaller, you're representing one of the biggest companies here in Sweden, mining companies, but being one of the smaller mining companies on the global scene. How would you say we get all these other smaller mining companies involved in applying and implementing this new standard on tailings management and tailings standard?
I'll say, as ICMM also said, that we have to be high transparency and share our experience with each other, so we can use how the other companies have done and how we are doing it. I would say that how we come together in this.
Just acting as a role model, you mean?
Yeah, I would say that.
So just a question maybe to all of you. Have we seen the last tailing failure now?
No, unfortunately, post Brumadinho, we've had a number of smaller tailings failures around the world. And to be fairly honest, the investment community are really concerned that we do have high risk dams that risk failing. So we're asking all the mining companies that we're engaged with to really start implementing this standard and to really take a third and a fourth and a fifth look at their current tailing dams. I think Imran's presentations was excellent. There is a concern that you change the course over the history of the mine, of the tailings structure, and you change the original plan. I think we're still concerned that there are a number of old dams where this has happened, and we need to work much more intensively on those dams.
Yeah.
So, please, Aidan, go ahead.
No, just to say, look, the launch of the standard, it's not the end point, it's the beginning in many respects of the hard work that needs to happen around implementation. I would hope that with effective implementation of the standard, that should ensure that facilities that adopt and embrace that approach and implement fully, that we would not see failures within those facilities. But equally, to John's point, ultimately what will protect against that is broad-based uptake, effective implementation, and indeed addressing some of those more troubled assets where ultimately there may be ongoing residual risks beyond anything that can be done in the short to medium term.
Yeah, and I think I just want to comment on something that I think it was John who said earlier, that we should mine, you said something like we should mine smarter. We need to mine smarter. And of course, I guess that's what all mining companies are striving for. We don't want to extract anything that is not possible to sell. So I think all mining companies are working hard to create as little waste or tailings as possible. Anyway, I think, do we have another question, Linus?
We do.
Over to you.
We have a viewer question here, and I guess it's an open question for the panel. How should we deal with companies that don't take this issue seriously? Should we be some kind of police, or how should we deal with these companies? Maybe Aidan?
I think to Aidan's point, and this is what we're really happy with, we're having great discussions with the insurance industry, with the banking industry. I think, quite honestly, I think this is an unprecedented opportunity for the whole mining industry to start cooperating. To your point, Emma, as well, I think we need to cooperate on smarter technology and how to become a better mining company. I think we can cooperate quite a lot on that. But I do think if you don't become a responsible mining company today and you don't take this seriously, you're going to have a really hard time finding finance. We're seeing that in so many other industries. And that's the key driver for becoming a responsible company is access to capital, which is a key thing if you're going to survive. So watch that space, I would say.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Back to Emma.
Yeah, okay. Do we have any final comments from you guys before we wrap this session up?
Emma, I'd like to make a comment. I mean, I was just sitting and just a thought came to my mind. I mean, one is the smaller mining companies. My suggestion is reach out to the larger companies like BHPs and Rios and ask for technical advice. I mean, you know, mining companies, generally there's a perception that we are very cagey, we don't talk to other competitors. That is true. We don't want to talk about commercials and other things, but on the technical side, there is opportunity that if you reach out to the proper channel, maybe through ICMM or some other bodies, you can get help from on the technical side, because we all recognize we're only as good as the weakest link. If BHP and Rio are the safest mining companies and there's a small one that does irresponsible, the next failure is coming on the statistics. I mean, it's not Imran talking about, it's the statistics. They don't lie. So when that happens, the investors are going to get very angry and they're going to paint everyone with the same brush. So I think it's in the interest. And maybe this is not Rio Tinto talking, this is Imran talking now. I'm not talking to Rio Tinto. But there could be a mentorship program, could be considered. A mentorship by large mining companies. They take 2 or 3 small mining companies or 5 of them under their wings and try to mentor them technically. Not commercially, nothing of that business side, but mentor them technically so that this program can come from the CEOs down. So this is something where John and Aidan can work, but this is just Imran talking, not Rio Tinto.
Okay, mentoring program, interesting. Do you have any other final comments?
I think that was excellent, Imran. That's an excellent ending point. I think cooperation is the key going forward. So much impressed by that. And then I think Aidan and the other co-conveners will continue on that line of work, definitely. Thank you all.
Just maybe one final comment from me, and it's very much consistent with the discussion we're having here through Svemin. We, in addition to our 27 member companies, we have 37 association members, and that gives us reach to almost another 1,500 companies. And so we look to work through those to disseminate both the standard, but also the supporting documentation that we're producing. And so that's a really valuable opportunity as well to reach a much broader set of companies than we do just directly through our company members.
Thank you, Aidan. Thank you. Hans, do you have any final remarks?
Not really, just to keep up the good work as we have started and try to see how we can help each other out in the best way. And it will be really interesting to continue this work that we have started.
That's good final words, I believe. So thank you very much, all speakers of this session. Thank you very much. And thank you all viewers and contributors to this session. The next session and the last session for this year's environmental conference will be on certification and traceability, and that will start at 11 o'clock, so in 30 minutes. So now get a good leg stretch and some shoulder rolling, and the next session will be hosted by the Svemin CEO, Maria Suner Fleming. So I say goodbye from Stockholm and see you next year maybe. Bye-bye.